The earthquake is obvious. Welcome, Madridistas. How's everyone? No one can hide this anymore, especially now when the club itself has made sure to leak the discontent, as you'd expect. They told Jose Felix, and he said it today. All right, let's get started. All right, so this was Mbappé arriving this morning at the training ground. Remember that after this incomprehensible honeymoon, these incomprehensible vacations in May, when his team still has plenty to play for, no matter how injured you are. Well, he arrived last night, about 10 minutes before the Madrid match started. Maybe he managed to get home in time to watch the second half, but really it wasn't very normal. Quite the opposite. Everything that was happening with Mbappé was absolutely crazy. And Arbeloa, and we mentioned it in the previous video without saying his name, but when asked about him and the differences with Vinicius, instead of just answering like, hey, Mbappé did whatever he wanted and so on, supported this decision by Real Madrid's medical staff. He didn't say it exactly like that. Remember, when he said Real Madrid's medical staff decide, to me, this is something that kind of implies it's not my decision, that everyone does what they want, instead of mentioning the Frenchman. And then when he's asked about the comparison with Vinicius, he praises Vinicius, which he had already done before. And a reflection on what Real Madrid should be, which nobody asked him about. They asked him about something else, not about that. It's the way Arbeloa had, this is explained more in the previous video. From my point of view, that was Arbeloa's way of saying it. Let's see, how do I put it? I avoid saying Mbappe's name, but I get my message across and express my anger and frustration without this causing a firestorm in the club. And well, I think Arbeloa handled it well there because the message was understood. Well, I insist, this was Mbappé arriving this morning, and by the way, he already drives. He arrived at Real Madrid without knowing how to drive and got his license just recently. Well, so there he was, and I insist, when Jose Felix Diaz says certain things, I always say the same thing. He speaks on behalf of the club. That's always been my impression, which, hey, is great. I mean, he's earned it after many years there building trust with certain people from the club, so that, well, he is one of the first to get information from inside. And the club wants this message to be made public without the club having to do it themselves. Therefore, they choose one of Real Madrid's longtime spokespersons. Trouble with Mbappé at Real Madrid. The club was unhappy with how visible his Italy trip was, concerned about his lack of discretion in staying out of the spotlight in Valdebebas. They don't understand his actions during these tough times. Beyond what I've said about them giving this guy information so he can put it out there and all that, we know how this works. It's just that here, I'm with my club. Absolutely, absolutely. How could I not be? How could they not express their discomfort and disbelief at these images, even if not publicly? Now then, this can perfectly well, parar, stop before things get out of hand. Mbappé needs to tell the club where he's going and what he's going to do because the club doesn't forbid it. No, it's just that we don't forbid it since we let players like Mariano and Vallejo stay here for years because we can't force them out. Always very respectful with the players, excuse me. I mean, if there isn't a strict internal disciplinary code, they're going to take advantage of you. Mariano did it well, and Vallejo too. Hey, I really like Vallejo, but you know what I mean? And a few more players, including Hazard, for example. Although in the end, Hazard had a bit of dignity and said, come on, hey, because the club was already asking him to. They were already asking him. Some clubs don't ask much from their players, but I don't want us to be like that. But I mean, they fool those clubs. Mbappé is not going to be fooled. And I see this as a real power struggle with the club, a very serious one. And I don't know what Mbappé wants to achieve. I've read some theories out there that say he's angry because of the wrong diagnosis and that Mbappé was right about that. So Mbappé was given a wrong diagnosis about his knee. I don't know if he's already at the point of confusing them or not, as was said, but there was a wrong diagnosis here. That's more than evident in December and all the mess later in January and part of February. That's very clear. I don't know if it's payback for that. I don't know if it's because he's already fed up and is forcing something, or because, well, he was also upset because they fired Xavi Alonso. And on that, I also agree with Mbappé. Saying this doesn't mean I'm taking one side 100%. I mean, there are things where the player might be right, but then not do this. I mean, not take it out this way. I'm not saying this should turn into a dick measuring contest like mine's bigger, so I win. Hey, yes, you're a star, but you're still an employee of the club. Why are you putting yourself out here like this? Or turning it into a power struggle. But what is this? What is this? I mean, it seems like something that must have affected not only the club, but also the coach, of course, because of those statements. It's clear that there are three important factors to consider here after what we've seen these days during Mbappe's vacation. The presidency, of course, the club, the coach, and the players. We just saw the club's position from Jose Felix Diaz, either spoken or written. The coach already mentioned it yesterday in a very subtle way during the press conference. The players, how do they express themselves? Well, they haven't said anything, but there are some people theorizing about their posts. It's always the same thing. And who likes it, and then what they post and all that. I don't really buy into this. Although I think the images of Mbappe have upset people, because many will say, hey, man, this guy, I mean, to begin with, they might even start to doubt, even though there's a medical report, they might start to doubt how much pain he's actually in. The problem Mbappe has, the injury Mbappe has, because you say, hey, damn, you go and do this, man. You even take a little trip with your girl. What has upset people? For sure. Because I think I know a bit about how things work there, but that's a big leap from saying, for example, that this post from Jude Bellingham is a message for Mbappe. He posted yesterday's starting 11, and obviously Mbappe isn't included since he didn't play. And then his hug with Vinicius. And guys, even less so the fact that Benzema posts a one with fire emojis and all that, which could also be a message from former players. Then Toni Kroos. Luka Modric, a lot of former footballers and former Real Madrid players have liked this. The thing about likes and reactions to footballers' posts is something that happens all the time. What happens is that a particular situation like this is taken advantage of to channel it into messages that people want to send. Honestly, guys, I don't think so. How many times does Jude Bellingham or any football player make a post? It's not even him posting it. Someone else does it for him. My headline that day. And this was the starting 11 that day, this Sunday in the match against Espanyol. The hug with Vinicius, because he had a great performance. Vinicius, 2 amazing goals. The fact that Karim Benzema posted that, besides that's outside the locker room, they're former footballers, is because both goals were amazing and because Vinicius had a great performance. That's it. There, I think that even understanding that, will the squad be upset with what Mbappe has done? Because that's not something you do, and no one is going to come out and say anything against him. Even if asked or someone speaks out, they'll say it, since tomorrow they might be in the same situation. No, the player is injured. Our private lives are our own and all that, but there is discomfort. But from there to this being staged in this way, come on, I don't believe it. Watch out, because in the last few hours, they're saying that the conversation between Florentino and Mourinho could happen very soon. Sooner than we think. It could be this week. So be careful with that. But from England, and I don't know if there's an agenda behind it too, they're saying something that Ramon Alvarez de Mont already mentioned quite some time ago on his channel. Contrary to what he thought, but it had been brought to his attention. And it's the interest of Real Madrid, the alleged interest of Real Madrid in this man, in Unai Emery, Spanish coach who is now at Aston Villa, who once managed Paris Saint-Germain and Mbappé. In Spain, he did it with Sevilla, Villarreal, and Valencia, and always in the eyes of Real Madrid fans. I think he was always kind of in a second tier of coaches. And from what I think I know about Real Madrid fans, they wouldn't understand someone like that coming to Madrid. Especially when people are talking about Mourinho, when they've talked about and are still talking about Klopp, I think it would be a bit of a letdown. Now, I think he's a very good coach, and I think he's a guy with a lot of personality. I'm not sure if Madrid would take that risk. We've already had Xavi, Alonso, and others, right? To bring in a guy who would stand firm with the players, unless that's not the intention, to bring in a guy who stands firm with the players, right? This is being said because someone might ask, right? Who's saying this? Tax sports in the UK, in Great Britain, which is an important outlet. And, well, I don't consider them to be people who just make things up, right? Besides, this was also said at the time by Ramon Alvarez de Mont, and I give him full credibility. It could also be that they're throwing names in there so people stop talking only and exclusively about Mourinho. Let's see. I think we'll know all about this in May because we can't go any further than that. Because honestly, I believe that a World Cup coach is not going to be hired since that would be too rushed. And because the coach who is least likely to be at the World Cup, I mean Pochettino or Deschamps or Scaloni and so on, he's going to be there at least until July at the very least. And Pochettino seems like the one who's least likely to be there because, with all due respect, he's coaching, right? Obviously, I care about them and want them to do something important at the World Cup, but it's the United States, right? But anyway, I don't think it'll be a World Cup coach, right? Why would it be? By the first week of June, he has to be planning and organizing the next season in terms of new players, signings, important departures, and so on. So that's why Emery makes sense to me. But I think Mourinho is ahead of him. Mourinho, man. Well, that's it. We'll keep sharing whatever we find out, though you might find out before we do because I'm not fooling anyone here. This isn't information I have or anything like that. We're just commenting in the moment. The landscape or information that I might have gotten. See you in the next one. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel, comment, share, and that's it. Have a great day. Bye.